Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to our session. Today, we're going to be talking about supply chain, and specifically, we're going to be talking about how you can improve supply chain efficiencies for better business results. I'm Andrew Hayden. I'm the Principal Product Marketing Manager at Precisely for our Automate products, and I will be your host today. And today, I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Michael Rice from Intellitide, who's one of our fantastic partners. And Michael, if you want to take a minute, since you're going to be doing most of the presenting, and introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and maybe a little bit about Intellitide before we get started, that would be great.
Well, thank you, Andrew. I've been working in master data management since 2005, and so have a lot of breadth of experience in strategy, designing governance for master data, and of course, selecting and implementing various master data solutions. Prior to that, I was a management consultant, so I have a strong background in business consulting, which helps, factor into how we position master data to support business such as supply chain. In terms of Intellitide, Intellitide is a innovative company that has built a platform that allows um, partners, buyers and sellers to collaborate in introducing new products and working at it from a holistic perspective with understanding not just the product, but the product at location and also all of the factors along the supply chain.
All right, great. Well, thank you. And we'll be back with Michael in just a few minutes. But in the meantime, what are we going to talk about today? Well, I'm going to talk to you a little about SAP processes and data challenges. If you don't know, Precisely Automate really focuses on SAP. And so as we talk through how SAP affects and SAP master data affects your supply chain processes, we're going to look at some of those challenges that you've got. We're going to look at the complexity around product data processes specifically. So if you think about that whole value chain that's part of your supply chain, how do we look at the flow of master data through that, and how do we look at what does it do within SAP, since SAP tends to be that operating system for our business? Then I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Precisely Automate and how we help automation overall. Then I'm going to turn it over to Michael, and he's going to give you a little bit more about what Intellitide can do for you and for your business in the supply chain area. And then we're going to do a little bit of a wrap up and have a discussion at the end. So where do we go from here? All right. So one of the key things when we think about SAP challenges is the fact that often you can't get past this interdependence of process and data. SAP kind of forces you to create and manage data using specific processes. And at Automate and Precisely, we're very, very concerned about both of these things, looking at how you're going to automate that process to drive efficiencies into it. But at the same time, the data that's in it is very important, because if you drive efficiency or you automate a process without considering the data, and that process is already creating bad data, well, you can make that you can create a situation where you're now creating bad data very, very quickly. And we want to avoid that. So that's something we're very, very conscious of. So when you think about the challenges within SAP, this is one of those things you have to be very cognizant of, is this interdependence of process and data. They go hand in hand. And now with SAP overall, there are a number of challenges that we're often dealing with. Complexity is a big one. When we do an annual survey with ASUG, so the American SAP User Group, and some of the interesting data we find out about that is why people don't adopt automation. So one of the big things is complexity. It's the complexity of the business process. 63% said that's one of the things that keeps them from automating that process or adopting automation for processes. There's a whole lot of, well, most of the SAP world in the ERP space is going through their upgrade and their modernization to SAP S/4HANA. But if you've got a complex environment, as ASUG found, it can take up to 6 years. I mean, the average is several years. I think it's a little below 2 years, but still massive amounts of time, which means it's taking a huge amount of resources within an organization. And while you're doing that migration, you have to maintain continuity in your business. So that's a big challenge. From a cost standpoint, there's a company called Horvath that did research as well around those S4HANA migrations. And they found that 60% of the people that they surveyed were over budget and over time. So their projects were delayed and they were costing more. Again, sucking up massive amounts of the resources they need. So again, we're trying to go through this migration and we're trying to maintain business continuity. And then another thing we know is as companies go through that, they're often in these mixed environments. You've got multiple systems or multiple ERP systems that you're trying to consolidate into a single S/4HANA instance. During that phase, I'll give you an example. I talked to a company last year. They've got 8 ECC systems. They're consolidating them into one S/4HANA system. They've moved 2 of them, which means they still have 6 of their systems on ECC, which means they have these mixed user interface environments. So you've got the SAP GUI, you've got SAP GUI for HTML, and you've got Fiori. And so there's a struggle with these multiple user environments. 54% of companies using SAP ERP systems have that struggle. We found that out in our research as well. So that's where people are. It's the environment right now for people using SAP and using SAP to manage their businesses and run their supply chains is very, very complex. And when you then go to just the day-to-day operations for SAP processes around SAP product data, they can be pretty complex as well. We're going to start in the middle, though. We're going to start in the middle with just a finished product and work upstream, not downstream. So if you think of it as upstream being your supply chain to get to a finished product, and then downstream is sales and distribution, customers, and other systems. We know just on that upstream side, there are a number of common data challenges, common product data challenges. You've got lots of different raw materials that you often have to manage and coordinate. And those, you could have multiple materials coming from one vendor, or you can have multiple vendors supplying the same material. Complex data objects. The average material record in SAP, I believe, has something like 300 data objects or data elements. And so there's complexity in creating that data. There's complexity in managing that data. And we do that through these highly complex processes. There's often frequent changes that go on. If you've got a packaged good like a beverage, you often have promotional packaging that you're doing. So that adds a degree of complexity. You can have language issues. You can have currency issues if you're a global company. So all of these things create a great deal of complexity and challenge within our organizations. And just simply looking at the way master data is going to move through the system. Yeah. If you're creating a product, you're often going to, your process is often going to start in procurement, and your procurement is going to go, product development has said, this is the product, this is the stuff we need in the product. And procurement's going to go, okay, what are the things we currently have on a list? What are the current, materials we have in stock or that we have on a vendor list? Who are the vendors that are going to supply it? So procurement is going to start creating those lists and identifying who are the vendors. And then you've got that vendor master data that then gets connected to your material master data. And you're going to go through all of these activities: manufacturing operations, warehousing, product planning, controlling, looking at what's my margin analysis. How do I actually make money as I create this product? And then finance is looking at, we've got to spend money on materials, and we've got to spend money, and we've got to pay these vendors, and then look at what's the money we're going to come in bring in from that finished good. So these upstream processes, which are connected to the downstream processes also, are highly complex in and of themselves. And there is a set of common data that's often moving through them. And it is that common master data that we're going to talk about, which often is one of the things that makes your supply chain activities and your supply chain processes that much more complex and that much more difficult to drive efficiencies into. And some of the things you think about: reference and conditional data. You've got your FERT, so finished products list. You've got bills of materials. You've got source lists. You've got routings. You've got your pricing and any changes that you have to do to pricing. All of these things are often connected, interlinked with one another, and that common thread running throughout is master data. So how do we make sure that we manage that master data and manage these complex processes as efficiently as possible? And this is where one of those areas where automation really comes into play. Because if you precisely automate from an SAP standpoint is we believe, the premier automation platform that you can get. We've been automating SAP processes for over 20 years. It's about 22 years. So we're very intimately familiar with SAP ERP, and we're intimately familiar about all of the processes across your entire environment. We are able to automate across that entire environment. We can help simplify SAP S/4HANA migrations and that process where you're trying to maintain continuity while you've got those multiple interfaces. We can help you do that. Improving product data management in terms of looking at how do you not only drive efficiencies into these processes, but how do you ensure that you're increasing your data quality throughout? We do data validation. We put guardrails in place. There are business rules that you can put in, whether you're using an Excel-based automation platform like our Studio, or whether you're using a form and workflow, full business process automation platform like our Evolve platform. All of these things are very important to making sure that your product data and your product data processes are as efficient as possible and driving value into your business. So they are not costing you significant amounts of both money and time when you can gain efficiencies through automation. And then the other thing is, artificial intelligence is in everybody's mind right now, and it's in everybody's ear. You talk to anybody, they're talking about AI. And there's two ways to look at AI readiness. One is having a platform in place that can adapt and adjust and give you efficiencies as AI is added in, which our Evolve platform sets you up to do. And we will have more information about that coming in 2026, but also having AI ready data, because the most, LLMs and other AI systems and algorithms require high quality data, so you're not getting hallucinations out of them. Automation is a really great way to ensure you're increasing the quality of your data and you know exactly where it came from. So gaining AI readiness is absolutely critical. Well, even without AI, though, we've seen some great success with what automation can do for customers. So a really great example, excuse me, an energy drinks company that used to manage everything very manually, adopted our Evolve platform, which I'll talk about in a minute, which is our full form and workflow business process automation platform. Because they had a couple of things that happened in rapid succession. So they had managed everything through Excel spreadsheets, but they needed to automate that process in order to hit SLAs as they went global, because they had a global distribution partner that said there's certain milestones you're going to have to be able to hit. And what they were able to do by automating that process, getting rid of a lot of those manual data processes, having an audit trail, having something that was traceable and provided reminders and gave them repeatable processes, was they cut their time to market for new products effectively in half. They cut it by 50 to 75%. Now, they did that while also expanding their supply chain massively, because they were going from a regional player to a global player. So now they had completely new supply chains. They had new vendors. They had new materials they had to adapt. They had new customer organizations. They had a new sales organization. They had all of those things that were going on. So the complexity of their organization exponentially went up. And at the same time, they were able to cut their time to market. So they were able to drive efficiencies into it using automation and using precisely automate. So a huge amount of benefit that you can gain just thinking about that. We've got this big complex problem. How can we address it and how can we gain efficiencies? 90% reduction in the cost and time. This is for materials management. So this is a company that had one single simple process. And if you know anything about SAP materials processes, making one single simple change can be a headache. And so in their case, they were able to automate that using our Automate Studio product, saved about $500,000 in the first year, just on that one single simple change. It's changing things as being indicated from materials or from manufactured to kitted. That's it. It affected a number of things, bills, materials, routings, other things, but it was going to cost them a ton of money. It was going to take a ton of time. Automating that process saved them all of that effectively. Global energy company, they've got this huge customer base of over 1 million customers. They were able to automate their customer creation and data management process so that it took the time from 144 hours to 6. So think about what that means for them. You've got 1 million customers. That's a massive time savings, but it also changes your customer satisfaction. It really fundamentally affects the way you can work with your customers when you go from 3 weeks to less than a day. And then 87% reduction in the time to vet, qualify new vendors and new materials. So this is a specialty metals company. They do mission critical stuff for aerospace and medical industry. Manually qualifying vendors and materials took about 2.5 years for them. It had to be right. They automated that process. They changed it to 3 months. So again, think, excuse me, think about what that means for their customer conversations. They changed their supply chain. They changed the way they create and manage vendors. But now their customer conversation changes from, oh, I'm going to have to create something new for you. Call me back in 2028 to call me back next quarter and we'll get work. So fundamental changes that automation can do for you today. And one of the things I tell people a lot these days is when you think about all the promises that AI is talking about, oh, we can drive all these efficiencies, you can do all these things, you can simplify it. There is a huge amount of those benefits that you can gain today that is proven technology that works that AI can't do. AI does not do complex workflow. It's just that simple. And as I mentioned earlier, we do this through our portfolio of Automate Studio and Automate Evolve. Automate Studio is the sort of premier Excel to SAP data management tool. It's great for mass data processes, like if you're doing mass updates, if you're doing pricing changes, things of that nature. It's really outstanding for that. And then Automate Evolve is our full form and workflow business process automation tool that is able to take SAP data and also can work with data from other systems like Salesforce and Snowflake and a few others, and be able to guide that process through that complex, or guide that data through that complex process that you've got. So if you've got multiple people throughout your organization engaged, I talked about that earlier, where your master data is moving through a complex workflow. Lots of interconnected processes where the common theme is that master data that's working through it, and that SAP master data. Evolve is a really great way to be able to manage that. And that beverage company that I mentioned earlier, that's what they were able to do using Evolve, was to manage that master data process through their entire, not only acquisition and supply chain, procurement, everything like that, but through manufacturing and through distribution out to customers. That's the power that automation can give you today. I'm not going to go into all these, but some of the things that we're able to deliver: form and workflow, connectivity to other systems, really true data management, where you're looking at how do you ensure higher data quality, know where that data is, provide audit trails. We can deploy in the cloud, which is more and more important. Govern those processes if you've got Sarbanes-Oxley or other requirements within your industry, or you have compliance requirements, whether they're internal to you or whether they're externally created by some kind of regulation. We can help you adhere to all those. It is a low-code or a no-code, low-code development platform, which means that often it is your business users working and developing the automation solutions for you. So one way to think about it, we have one customer who has a core IT team of about 25 people who are using Automate and developing the complex solutions, but they support a network of over 100 citizen developers around the world. And those citizen developers on their local business area, in their local department, in their unit, are able to develop the simpler or less complex automations right there that are necessary for them. And they can do it very quickly, and they can scale automation across their organization very fast. So no-code, low-code platform for these complex processes, especially in SAP, which is not an easy platform to automate in, is a very, very powerful thing to have across your organization. And then attended and unattended automation. If you've got humans in the loop, it has to be attended. Often you have to have that for compliance and regulatory requirements, or just simply the way the process works and the way you're inputting data. And unattended automation, where you're able to use APIs to move data using our tools, primarily Studio, from one system into SAP or out of SAP into another system. And I mentioned we're able to improve data quality. So what does this give you? It gives you a unique set of capabilities. So there's flexible, agile automation for those SAP master data processes and master data use cases, where you have that master data moving through various parts of your organization. We are able to help you manage that interdependence of process and data. So we're taking that into consideration as you work through the process. Address verification and data and SAP data enhancement. So precisely at its core is a data management and data integrity company. And so we are able to help ensure that you have the highest quality data possible in things like your addresses, or you can enhance it and enrich it with geocoding and other things that you may want, especially if you're looking at supply chain. Where do things need to be delivered? Where are they housed? What environments are they in? So precisely can help overall really drive efficiencies there. And then we have a excuse me, a data strategy consulting group, which is product agnostic, but they can really help you with that strategy you need to look at of how do we drive efficiencies across our entire organization. We've got interdependence of many different processes and a lot of different data, not just SAP, but across our entire IT environment. And our data strategy consulting group can help you do that. Now, one of the key things, they talked a lot about master data, and Michael's going to talk to you a little bit more about kind of the importance of MDM. And it precisely, Enterworks is our MDM hub, which means that you can manage that overall master data environment that's not just SAP, but all of the other systems of record that you need to be able to do. And we're able to do that through the interaction on the SAP side with Evolve, but Enterworks can work across many different environments and in many different ways, helping you drive efficiencies in your supply chain organizations and really in your entire enterprise management and enterprise data management situations. So hopefully, I know this has been very brief. Hopefully that's been a helpful introduction and overview to what Precisely Automate can do, especially if you're an SAP shop. We would love to talk to you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Michael, and he is going to take you through how Intellitide can take you to the next level with your supply chain challenges. So Michael, take it away.
Thank you. That was a great overview. If you could go to the next slide, please. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the urgency to invest in supply chain intelligence, or not said another way, intelligence in your supply chain. I think a lot of companies got wake-up calls back in 2020 with COVID and realized that their supply chains weren't as resilient as they thought they were. So I have a little chart here on the next page that helps kind of explain some of these are the top five causes of supply chain disruptions. And if you look at through those, right now we're in the geopolitics with the tariffs that are wars that are going on currently. But then also there are other factors that are currently present. And I call attention to obviously COVID and what happened there. But something else that's very significant today is ones that are around ESG, environmental, social, and governance. If you look at what happening in California with, we're all aware of probably Prop 65, but now there is SB 253 and 261, which deal with companies reporting about emissions. So you're going to have a very good understanding of your supply chain to be able to do the type of reporting that states like California and others will follow, will ensue. At the federal level, you're talking about the FDA and what's known as FSMA, FSMA 204B, which looks at food traceability. So if you're a company that is selling food over a certain size, a company that's selling food to the consuming population, you will have to trace your sources of the supply of the food all the way back to the farm. And that's going to require a lot of information about your supply chain and a lot of collaboration with your partners as well. One thing that we know for sure that with these types of things that are happening, some of which are in our control and some of which are not, there is an ever presence of uncertainty around supply chains that's here to stay. So on the next slide, we want to just basically talk a little bit about, really the supply chain in itself and being able to kind of foster intelligence about the supply chain really is predicated on being able to collaborate with all of the interested in parties. And so when you look at the buy and the sell side, that's in some ways a little bit of an oversimplification because as we'll see when we get to further in the presentation, the buy and sell side are very complex in terms of the number of parties and the parts of the supply chain that have to be managed. Okay. So if you think about the customers on the far right, and that could be a B2B customer with ultimately getting it to the end consumer, which is what the ultimate goal is. There is also the company where represented by you are here, where you're selling to your customers, but you also are a customer to your suppliers, vendors, and distributors. So this is kind of the grand scale of all of the parties that are have to collaborate in order to kind of introduce new products effectively, and so it really kind of has to center around this process, the one that Andrew kind of talked about, where Evolve gets in and helping automate that business process. But if you look at the business cycle and all of the various people and departments that have to be involved and the corresponding business systems. So for a lot of companies that run on SAP, a lot of the functional modules within SAP are there to support the business processes. And, one of the things is you have to kind of look at the product from in its entirety. So if you go to the next build, you'll see it's not just dealing with the end product, it's also with the raw materials and semi-finished goods that have to be purchased or procured or even manufactured. And with that, again, at the next level is all the information that has to be traded between partners. So if this is kind of the full view of what every companies or set of companies are having to deal with, again, I'll draw your attention to the part in the middle. The biggest problem that companies are having, ones that even have an MDM or PIM solution, is that those solutions are not aligned with the business process. So you might have a product onboarding process that's being orchestrated by your PIM tool, but is it aligned with the business process that manages the procure to pay, where you're dealing with your suppliers, and also the order to cash cycle, where you're dealing with your customers? And is your MDM solution providing information that's timely, accurate, and relevant? And that's very important. A lot of times, this is oversimplification that a lot of the information is just there all at once. But when you get into the realities, you understand that the information, when you're bringing new products to market, they come over a longer period of time, especially when they're new products and not just variants of an existing product, like a additional SKU that represents a new flavor or size. So I think that's where Automate really kind of comes into play because it can help you keep relevant the information that's master data and getting it to the appropriate corners of SAP and the modules that are needed to by the various departments in order to operate the new onboarding or new product introduction process. So what Intellitide does is it's a platform that allows you to have a 360-degree view around content. And this is not just master data content that is really kind of managed in your MDM or PIM. It's it brings in also other planning and operational or executional data so that all interested parties can get on the same page and see the same thing. And that is kind of where the magic happens and allows companies to really have a competitive advantage in terms of being able to leverage their supply chain. And one of the reasons that this is becoming increasingly difficult is because as companies look to work on their supply chain intelligence, it first typically starts with visibility, right? So when COVID happened, a lot of people weren't really sure about what their exposure was because they didn't have a full view of what their supply chain uh, was. And so now a lot of companies have kind of shored those things up since 2020, but they're still working on the other initiatives, which is agility. So basically adding or reconfiguring or re-engineering or thinking their supply chains to be more resilient and more robust, which typically means more changes to the supply chain and its participants, and also additional participants to give you the added flexibility. One other tenet of supply chain is people working on, obviously, have to still work on cost and performance. And then finally, the last one is around sustainability. How sustainable is the supply chain? And including that is ESG, which is another factor which companies will be measured on. Even today, Dun and Bradstreet will score various companies on their ESG scores, and that will make a difference to between buyers and sellers on who you're going to have a part of your supply chain. So if we think about this big picture and all the things that have to happen, if we go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about how the platform helps with collaboration, right? So the 360, and I'll just refer to it as SCC 360, it provides a way to onboard across multiple domains of master data. So supplier, customer, product. And when I say supplier, it's a little bit more diverse than that because there's vendors, suppliers, there are 3PLs, there could be banks, there could be distributors. All these people are parties, if you will, in the work of working together with other companies. And so that's one part of it. The second part is bringing in all the pertinent information to successfully execute that business cycle into one view, which is the visual supply chain 360 that shows you all of the details around where products are, where they're being manufactured, how they're being transported, where they're being stored, and other various details. Then the next point is about performance, being able to make sure that everybody who's participating can see where they are in terms of their performance and where there needs to be improvements. And then right along with that is the ability to be alerted. So one of the key things of having this type of a platform is it needs to be event based, meaning when you there's something for one of the parties to do, they will get notified through an alert or notification that says there is a requirement for you to complete some work. So that is a big part of it, and it's usually supported by Supply Chain Content 360 and also MDM, because most MDMs will have a workflow capability that will help orchestrate the activities between the various parties. And then finally, one big piece is the ability to actually have effective communications. I think we all now get into these meetings, and primarily people are using email. But when you look at email to as a way to communicate, it's it's not as effective because there's so many other messages that get mixed in that it's so easy to miss an email where action is required. So being able to have in-app notifications that tell you exactly what to do. Just like we're on a Zoom call or a team call, you can directly communicate in that moment in the chat. So the same thing would apply to these platforms, is the ability to have an in-app chat where you can communicate and have a thread about a specific issue that you're dealing, or even have a chat bot to help explain what's expected to the participants who are newer to the platform. So that's kind of what the platform does from just a collaboration of getting everybody to work together. If we look at the other part of the platform, which is Factor AI, Factor AI is basically a set of very powerful web slash data services that are delivered through LLMs, large learning modules, and just having AI or generative AI contribution to solving high value use cases. I think that's really important. There's a lot of automation, and automation is great. And we've heard a lot about that, where you're taking very complex but mundane tasks and you're alleviating the human from doing those things so that they can focus on higher value added activities. Some of the examples that what factory added does is it can go out, for example, and go take a PDF that's sent by a supplier with all the pertinent details, and it can read that PDF and grab the information or the attribution out of the PDF and populate it within the MDM system. And then Evolve can take that same information and then get it to the various corresponding modules within SAP so that the business process can continue uninterrupted. One of the biggest delays in introducing new products is the availability of information. Either the information is determined to be defective, or it's not there when needed, right? And then there's a lot of additional effort to go down and track down the information. Meanwhile, the business processes are held up. So being able to use these technologies to help really kind of turn a corner on how do we manage volumes of information and do it across dozens of people and dozens of participants is really important. So one of the, I think it's kind of interesting that as long as PIM has been around and since the early 2000, a lot of companies are still struggling with the same thing. How do we ingest data? And there's two schools of thought. There are the buyers who say, "Hey, we're going to provide you with templates or a way to come into a portal, such as SEC 360 to manually enter your information." Well, think about that for the supplier who may have thousands of customers. If they have to do that for all the customers, it's just very time consuming and cost inefficient. And then on the other hand, you have the buyers who have thousands of suppliers, and they don't have the ability to ingest just any type of file and go through those files and process them manually to pick out the information and validate what they need. So the solution is really kind of meet in the middle, where we're using AI to take data from your suppliers in the format that they can give it, and then have technology automap that data into your MDM solution. And then, of course, as it's in, once the mapping is done, which is what BYOF stands for, bring your own file auto mapping. So then the supplier would then map their spreadsheet or file into the buyer's MDM solution. And then once that mapping is approved, then they can just ingest the data. And then of course, MDM then monitors the quality and the completeness and relevancy of that data. So that BYOF auto mapping is kind of very powerful because it's going to help you get information from your partners a lot quicker. And one of the things that companies, it's a little bit more of an afterthought, but the biggest challenge is not getting the initial data. It's understanding when data changes and what that impacts. So the first thing you typically have to understand is what changed, because you may be getting just a refresh of the whole file. So you don't know exactly what has changed in that file. And the platform will take a look at that and it will determine the deltas of the changes. And then once you ingest that change between the platform and your MDM tool, it will actually determine which of those changes have the biggest impact in terms of what is impact and what is the size of impact. And it can do a couple things. It can send notification back to your suppliers that, hey, they have some problems they have to address. Or let's say it's something like there was a price change that was out of out of the tolerance, then you could start a workflow within your MDM to resolve that with your suppliers. But again, if you think about how supply chains are growing, how dynamic things are, things like pricing changes are something that is very much needed as we talk about supply chains. But a lot of PIM tools don't really handle pricing that well. And so SEC 360 can take non-master data related feeds and then work with backend systems through Evolve to actually take that information, get it into the right parts of the business applications so that people can respond accordingly. So that's one of the big things. And then from an overall perspective of just being able to track and everybody understands how performance is happening as a snapshot, whether we're talking about one item, but also what's happening from a trend analysis perspective. That's the bigger kind of deliverable or value that you would get is being able to look through and analyze, hey, how has my price in this category from all my suppliers happened? What about my lead time? Is that going up or down? And if it is, then you can go back and readjust your supply chain accordingly to address those performance concerns. So that's just a general overview of what the platform brings to the table and how it sits on top of your solution of Evolve Studio and Interworks, along with SAP to provide a 360-degree view. And I would say to anybody who's watching this, Andrew, you mentioned before that everybody's talking about AI, right? Well, this year when I was at National Retail Federation show, the big show, I did a calculation and about 73% of the sessions were about AI in some form or
Yeah.
factor. So now as we go to, right? So as we get to the tail end, so that's great, right? That those sessions were well attended. People are trying to educate themselves. But now fast forward, and we're now towards the end of the year. If you're still in the kind of discovery mode on AI, I think it's safe to say that you're behind. One of the things about this platform is it allows you to introduce AI into your business at a use case level, right?
Right.
We're using factor AI to solve kind of the higher added value added use cases like going off to a website and ethically scraping that website for comparative information or just to be able to enrich information for your own website. So you go to your supplier's website, there may be additional things there that you can get that you can then turn and leverage on your website as you try to sell that product.
Outstanding. Thank you. Yeah, I was writing down a couple of questions as I was going through. I think that's extremely helpful. I hope everybody found it helpful. So back on the AI topic, from a supply chain standpoint, do you find that supply chain is a leader or more of a laggard when it comes to AI? I know my experience, which is very limited, admittedly, is that it feels like supply chain is often a bit of a laggard when it comes to adopting new processes and new technologies. So where does it fit as AI becomes that more prevalent thing that everybody's pushing? What's been your kind of experience and
Right.
trend spotting, if you will?
Yeah, I think for me, it's kind of how, I came into understanding AI, one, just using it personally in my day-to-day life. But if you think about supply chain, they've always used technology
Yeah,
for automation. You think about supply chain planning solutions where they're actually taking in a lot of information and data and they're making up a supply plan or they're putting together a forecast based on a bunch of points and different factors. So the automation part, I just think of that as simple AI. Think about it in this perspective. The first
yeah, that's a good
robot,
way to look at it.
right, that people had in their home was first robot might have been sticking your hand under um, a little sensor and getting a little squirt of soap.
Yeah,
And that technology was called Simple Human, right? Going in front of your garbage can and it opens up so you didn't have to open up with your hand. Now that has totally evolved into um, Alexa and other apps that are controlling your home and setting temperatures and knowing that you're not there and doing things on your behalf and reminding you of packages that have been just delivered through your Ring camera. So think of it as a continuum. When you think about it for I always think about it from going from solving small problems, right, that you
Yeah.
automate to solving complex problems that require a deeper level of thinking and a deeper level of understanding. And I think that's what AI brings because it can go out and get recent information like weather conditions and world events
Yeah.
and help you determine how that works. So even our platform, we can tap into weather services and we're using some of the functionality around locate, which is another precisely product, so that we can show your supply chain and if there are any impending weather events that would cause delays in the transport of goods from point A to point B. So having AI just sit there and monitor these events and then just raising awareness. So it's not necessarily going to be, it's going to automatically reroute for you and solve problem. It'll come in stages. It'll first notify a human that's just going to then look at a recommendation and approve to eventually some of the things that typically happen quite frequently, automation and
Right.
AI will just go ahead and improve those things.
So do you see, and this is just my last question because just for time, going back to your ESG conundrum, if you will, do you think AI is a really good way to identify differences and reconcile kind of ESG requirements in a global organization? So you might have something in EMEA that may align with a California regulation, but it's worded differently or it's structured slightly differently, and so it's a way to really help, like I said, reconcile that within your supply chain system or within your overall supply chain management process.
I do. From this perspective, I feel like someone who's responsible for that, that's an expert, a human, right? Um, 20 years of experience, they're probably best suited to deal with that. It's just a matter of
Right.
how they can scale. So to me, I see AI again as a man machine kind of assist kind of thing where they're processing volumes of data and based on that they can then um, leverage the human can get more leverage because they can add the nuances that maybe AI just isn't in position to do, or it is in a position to do, but we're not ready for it, right? So if you think about the analogies is like Deep Blue, IBM's big, massive computing capability, and being able to beat world champions in chess, not because of anything other than it can process, you know, billions of moves in advance in a second in terms of probabilistic outcomes. So therefore, it can always optimize what each move that it makes. A human just can't do that.
Right. Okay. All right. Cool. Well, I thank you very much. This has been really helpful, and I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about what Intellitide does, and I've learned a lot more about supply chain. So, Michael, thank you so much. As we wrap
Well,
up,
thank you, and
just yeah, and as we wrap up, just for those of you who may be new to Precisely or trying to understand a little bit more about what we do, as I mentioned, we are the leader in data integrity. So we provide you with the accurate, consistent, and contextualized data you need to really make those intelligent decisions and make your data AI ready. We have a variety of services, software, other things that you can need. Uh, we're in about 12,000 different organizations around the world. We are in over 90 of the Fortune 100 companies. We've got about 2,700 employees on any given day. And anytime you're looking to know what we work with most of the largest technology partners in the world. So I just want to thank everybody for being here. I know your time is valuable, and we very much appreciate that you've chosen to spend it with us. Michael, any final thoughts, comments, or things you want to just leave the folks with?
Now, just tell everybody to, embrace the changes in the future because in the long run, having this newfound intelligence around your supply chain will definitely be a competitive advantage.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you very much. And I hope everybody has a happy and healthy day. Bye.